It's fun doing these things, but it's also, I'm not usually in front.
Right, yeah.
My name is Sandra Valde-Hansen. I am a cinematographer, and I shoot mainly television, episodic, and feature films. Clean Slate follows the journey of this outspoken, curmudgeon-y car wash owner in Alabama who is thrilled that his estranged son is coming home after so many years. And he has some soul searching to do because his son is now a very determined and proud trans woman.
Hello?
Hi, Miss Fancy Lady. Just reliving a good time right now. My son's coming in a minute.
Dad, I'm your daughter, Desiree. I've always been Desiree.
Clean Slate is a 30-minute comedy inspired by personal connections that our showrunner, Dan Ewan, has to the story, and then also inspired by the personal journey of our lead and executive producer, Laverne Cox, who is not only a fantastic performer, but also a huge advocate and voice for the LGBTQ+, particularly the transgender community. And Dan and Laverne, and also our other star and other executive producer, George Wallace, all grew up in the South. And George Wallace is a legendary comedian, and Dan was George Wallace's comedy writer or stand-up comedy writer for many years. They wanted to come up with a show that was not only a comedy and funny, but something that was very poignant and really topical for today's society. They went to the legendary Norman Lear. As we all know, Norman Lear has a slew of iconic television shows that were very controversial at their time. Even though they made Americans laugh, they also made Americans think. Having Norman's involvement and Laverne, it was really, I think, the thing that pushed this forward. It is in kind of the wheelhouse of things that I like to do. I'm not married to any sort of genre. One of my focuses in the last few years is stories of diverse voices. And I don't necessarily mean like it has to be a story that is of that particular voice. It should be a universal story. It's just told through the eyes of somebody who is maybe not seen on television or film. And so, of course, this was totally up my alley, and it was funny and poignant, and the writing was amazing. And so, you know, as we do, I interviewed with the two showrunners, Dan Ewan and Simran Badwan, and I talked a little bit about how I saw the show, and I guess they liked my ideas, and they brought me along. And so I'm really proud that they did, and I'm really proud of the work that we did and the look of the show. We had a very particular aim and goal for the look of this show. It is a comedy, but we didn't want it to look like a high-key, slick, typical comedy. We actually wanted this to feel pretty real. We wanted it to be really grounded in reality. We wanted it to actually be very tangible and textural, because the whole idea of the show is to create an environment, to create a story that the audience can almost feel like they're inside of. I think that not only helps us connect the audience with our characters, but also I think subconsciously it's maybe saying to the audience, like, you know, these are characters that you don't usually see on television, and they are doing the same things you guys are doing, and then there is like this hopefully subconscious acceptance. The aim for me in terms of lighting was very naturalistic and all very motivated. And then compositionally, we wanted to bring the audience into the environment. We wanted to always start with these really graphic wide shots that set up the environment and showed us the world. The cameras were always dictated by the people. So if the people were static, the camera was static. The only time we really moved the camera is when the people were moving. Again, we wanted to always be with the people that we were covering. We wanted to make the audience feel as if they were in the story. And then we did have a color trajectory, which I'm very proud of. So when you start the show, you're introduced to Harry. He drives this amazing blue convertible. He has this car wash that he is so proud of that is in these kind of bright primary colors. For us, the South is very warm and also very green because there's a lot of foliage and then the Spanish moss. It's really beautiful. So we wanted to enhance that by making things warm, but then also really kind of concentrate on the colors. However, at the beginning, his house is actually very dark. His house is a remembrance of his entire family that he's lost. His wife has passed away, his child has left. And so in his space, it's fairly dark, it's cluttered. He's trying to hold on to the past. It's very monochromatic, very opposite of what his world is outside. But then when Desiree comes in, she becomes kind of this bright light and hope, and comes in and does a little decorating, peels away some of the many layers. Our set decorator, did an amazing job of like creating this kind of cluttered house and then turn it into, pulling away the layers. And at the same time as they're pulling the layers, the light is coming in and the color is coming in. So I shot on the Sony Venice 1. The reason why I chose the Sony Venice is because I love how it handles skin tones. It really is true to skin tones. It's really great in mixed lighting and color situations, which we definitely had during the show. And then, of course, its low light capabilities was absolutely key. And also dealing with different skin tones, giving us a little bit more room in the shadows, made it a lot easier for my lighting and grip team to work. This particular show I felt, and the pilot director felt, which is really great, that this show should be anamorphic. Because it is a very intimate story, but it is also a story that needs scope and environment. The environment is a huge character in this show. As a cinematographer, I feel like one of the greatest parts of my job is I'm like a painter. Like I use the camera as my kind of brush where I can dictate to the audience what they should be looking at. And so with Anamorphic, because of the intense kind of very shallow depth of field, it really does allow our eyes to go to whomever's in the scene. I actually tested quite a few anamorphic lenses, and Atlas was literally by far #1 for many different reasons. But I just did feel that there was some texture and tangibility to the image that it creates. And I love the color rendition and the speed of the lenses. I wasn't easy on my focus pullers. I was shooting a lot of times wide open or somewhere between a 2.28 because I wanted to minimize depth of field as much as possible so that our characters can stand out in our big environment. Most of the lenses, and because of uniformity and size, it was much easier for my camera assistants. And I'm always, trying to think about my team because they're going to be the ones, carrying these cameras, moving them around. And, we are on a very tight schedule. So I have to, figure out a way for them to succeed also. So the combination of the really amazing impressionistic look of the Atlas Orions And then also just the mechanics of the lenses really made the best combination. Whenever we shot people, we would always do, our A camera was the wider shot, and that would usually be a 40, and then the B camera would be on the inside for the tighter eye line, and that would somewhere between an 85 and 100. It really kept us into being able to still be with the characters, tell their story, but then also see the environment around them. So, I mean, I did use for the most part, the most of the lens set, but every particular lens had a particular job. So at the beginning of our show, in our pilot episode, we are introduced to Harry, and it was really important to us that the way we introduce him is via his car. He loves his blue convertible. We didn't actually do any sort of car mounts, but every time we shot Harry in his car, he would kind of pull up, and then we'd have camera on the side of the road and be a little bit lower to kind of give him agency, give him power. And then as far as lighting goes, if the car was moving, it was all really, you know, hope for the best, and by chance, we could not cover him, which is usually what I was doing with any of the day exteriors, because I'm really not, in this show, I didn't necessarily want any sort of harsh dappled light on any of our characters. And we could not cover Harry because, you know, it's a convertible, we'll see everything. So it was fairly natural, but when he did stop, we were always figuring out how to put some sort of overhead, and it was usually, we had a formula for that. It was usually a magic cloth with a single net on it. You know, it was something that my key grip and I both came up with. In this scene, we have our character of Mac, who is Harry's employee, and his daughter, Opal, who is this pretty much an old soul. And so Desiree has taken Opal and Harry to JoJo's Down Home Hoedown, which is a carnival that our production designer, our team, had to create pretty much out of nothing. It's a great scene that combines both the intimacy and comedy. Opal is, you know, she's sad because her classmates were making fun of her dad. She also is afraid that, you know, that she will be called that. And so her dad, Mac, and her have a bit of a heart-to-heart. But at the same time, JoJo shows up. I mean, and JoJo is this dog character in this crazy costume. And so, again, we have this wide shot that shows us our environment, because again, for the comedy of it all, we need to see the hoedown. We need to see the characters in the background. But then, you know, with the lenses, that intimacy is created, particularly with Opal. Like we actually are wide and close. So we see, I mean, that little girl could run circles around some actors. I mean, she is just an amazing actor, and everything is played in her eyes. So to be able to be that close and see everything, and she still looks so cute, like you could totally feel her pain and then also her happiness. And then you cut to the other side, which is her dad, who is also trying to console her, and then this crazy dog, you know, and he's sitting, the dog is like standing and is fairly tall. And so to be able to have a lens that can hold those two in the frame, you know, really did kind of emphasize the comedy of the scene. And as far as lighting goes, again, very kind of naturalistic. This particular scene, it was a little bit of a challenge for us because, well, in the South, or usually in the East Coast, they get thunderstorms. And when a thunderstorm happens and lightning is close, we have to shut down all the generators. And lo and behold, when we went and started this scene, there was a lightning delay. So we had to shut down all of our generators. Originally, our plan was to use big lights outside, you know, that would require generator power. And my gaffer, who is from North Carolina and just is so great, him and his team can really like change power around in no time. we figured out a way of lighting this scene without generator power. So we do have a couple of 4Ks, I believe, outside the windows, like that you can see in the wide shot, that is doing a lot of the work for both Opal and her dad. There are some rafters at the top that I believe we hung some LEDs just to enhance the two. And then when we were going into coverage, we did bring lights a little bit closer just to get into their eyes. Again, Anamorphic is a little bit tricky, particularly on a show like this that has to move quickly, because we see more. That means my gaffer has to light more. And so we do see in the deep background, and of course, it's a dark, wooded kind of eatery. And so luckily we have three Sky Panel 360s that kind of light up the background that he had two of. Luckily we had two of those, so we could light the background pretty quickly. So that's very naturalistic, all very kind of soft. We didn't, I didn't necessarily have the firepower to do any hard light, which I think was my original plan, but because of the lightning delay, it was hard. Fun fact, or like little thing, in the wide shot actually is in the background. There's a booth that's literally right across from Mac and Opal. My husband and daughter are in the scene, so sitting in the booth. So I'm really excited about that. This is from a scene in episode 107. It's our Mardi Gras episode. Desiree goes to the Fluidity Ball to kind of celebrate Mardi Gras. At this Fluidity Ball, she meets these kind of younger girls, Natasha, white Natasha, and Taylor. And they're just having fun, kind of dancing on the dance floor, and Desiree gets a text from Mac, and there is potentially like a little glimmer of a romance kind of building between Mac and Desiree. It is just a really kind of fun scene. There was a lot of thought, both myself and Sam, our production designer, in terms of what this space looks like. And so to be able to see the scope and the wider lenses, to be able to see everything, it was amazing the amount of background we were able to get, and they all came dressed for a Fluidity Ball. And these people like went all out. And so to be able to see these characters head to toe in these crazy like sequence and light up like outfits was just fantastic. As far as lighting goes, again, we had to start from pretty much scratch. We were shooting in an existing club, but nothing worked. Apparently they have a lot of raves at this club, and people will throw bottles of champagne that hit the projectors, so the projectors weren't working. We had to bring in our own projectors. The lights weren't working because of basically the guests that they have. So we literally had to, like my rigging gaffer had to redo the electricity in the space. But the production designer and I, we really thought about this. We started thinking about this like really early on, and this is episode 7 out of 8. He had this thing about doing fiber optics. And of course, we didn't have the money to do that, but I, on Amazon, found these LED lights that are built into like a fishing line. So it kind of looks like fiber optics, and he ended up buying a couple. We tested them, they worked with our cameras, there was no flicker issues. And then him and Samita, our set designer, created these crazy like chandeliers, and then we had mannequins that lit up, and then my gaffer brought in Diablo moving lights and Sharpie moving lights, and we had all of these things kind of going, and smoke, and between the Sony Venice handling the mixed colors and all the crazy colors that was happening, and then and the Atlas lenses also, like color rendition was totally on point. And it really did actually give some texture, so it didn't necessarily feel so slick. That was like one of my biggest things. Like I didn't, even though what we were doing in this party was really fun and it looked great, I also wanted it to feel just a little textural. I mean, dirty is not the right word, but I wanted it to feel just a little tangible, and the atlas really got me there. I'm really excited for the world to see Clean Slate. It is a story of acceptance. It's a story about, really being who you truly feel you are, really focusing on your true identity, not necessarily how you were biologically born, but who you feel inside, and to not be afraid to do it, and to know that there is a community out there that will support you, whether it is your family or it is a surrogate family. Like, there are avenues for you to shine, who you truly are. And I'm really thankful to the team for allowing me to kind of pursue this look, which is very opposite of what might happen in a comedy, because I think it really does ground us, but then it does emphasize also the fun and the livelihood of all the scenes. And then I want to thank Atlas, because I think the Atlas lenses really contributed to this textural, natural, grounded look, all in a comedy. So I'm very excited for the world to love this comedy, and then hopefully watch season 2.